Having already reviewed and loved the majority of Kia's EV fleet, I was curious to see how its smallest and most affordable EV would compare. Today we're looking at the EV2, which at the time of filming and in UK is available in a few trims. You've got the Air, the GT and the GT Line S, and there's also a limited run with the first edition models. Now prices range from roughly £28,000 and go up to roughly £35,000, although you will be able to note that there is a bracket over here, and yes, prices go down to £24,000 up to roughly £32,500 thanks to the UK government grant. Now in this review, which will be covered in such a format, we'll see if it's actually worth its price tag and fundamentally how it compares to its siblings and competitors. But before doing so, if you do want to find some of the best deals for it, make sure you check out the links down in the description below, the pinned comments, or by scanning the QR code that can be found on your screen. So let's kick things off and talk about its electric range. And yes, indeed, you have got that first edition model, but it's actually a very limited run with its 42.2 kilowatt hour battery pack. I was told by Kia UK it's effectively in order to reach some initial demand and goes out to the dealers and showcases what the vehicle can actually offer because it's pretty much fully loaded. But in terms of what's going to be available in the future, well, this model will effectively be discontinued. Nonetheless, should you be curious about it, it's got a 42.2 kilowatt hour battery pack with an LFP chemistry, lithium iron phosphate for short, and also has got a range claim of 195 miles, that is on the mixed WLTP driving cycle. Now what's more appropriate is that the Air, the GT and the GT Line S models share the same longer range battery pack of 61 kilowatt hour. It's got a nickel manganese cobalt chemistry instead, and this battery pack has got a range claim of 257 up to 275 miles. Now from my own mixed driving tests, which were conducted on the country roads, in and around town and also on the motorway, I actually netted a very respectable 210 to 230 miles. Now as you'll be able to see from the mileage leaderboard, it's neither the best nor is it the worst. In fact, I'm actually pretty impressed given the overall cost and the form factor of the EV2, effectively making it compete with some of its key competitors, namely for example from what Stellantis or BYD actually offer. Now what isn't as good, however, is that the manufacturer has yet again omitted a heat pump across the entire trim range, and that will certainly put off some consumers, especially EV enthusiasts who really do appreciate what a heat pump brings, especially on those colder climate days, effectively adding to your overall efficiency. If you do want a heat pump, you'll have to go for the top spec GT Line S model and add an additional £700 on top, which I think is absolutely ridiculous. Now on the other hand, I do really love the fact that the manufacturer has provided you plenty of customization when it comes to regenerative braking. See, here you have got a multitude of modes which can be adjusted on the fly thanks to paddle shifters. I'm driving at 12 miles an hour, and if I were to lift off on the level 3 mode, the vehicle will decelerate pretty harshly, but it can actually come to a complete standstill by holding the left side paddle shifter, and that initiates iPedal mode, effectively meaning that it's a little less cumbersome to drive in and around town. Better still, the iPedal mode can also be customized, so therefore if you're on the iPedal mode and want to, for example, still roll and then come to a complete standstill, well, you can do that because you have got the level 2, level 1 and the level 0 modes. I'm not really sure where that would be applicable, but still, nonetheless, it is the fact that you have got that customization on the fly. You have also got the automatic mode, which can effectively be done on the go via its own systems by holding down the right side paddle shifter, and here the auto mode effectively will allow it to do its own thing in terms of what it determines is best, and will go based on what you've actually set it before via the infotainment system. Effectively what I'm trying to say over here is the degree of customization when it comes to regenerative braking is certainly appreciated. Now aside from recouping energy while on the move, you can also plug it in, and all the models have got up to 118 kilowatts of input via its DC port, and therefore allows it to go from 10 to 80% in roughly half an hour, handy for example when you're on the motorway. A 50 kilowatt charger will take you 1 hour and 10 minutes to attain the same level of charge. The vehicles have also got an 11 kilowatt onboard charger, therefore allowing you to go from 10 to 100% in 5.5 hours. It will of course take longer on a regular 7 kilowatt wall box or a 3-pin input. Also, I'd like to mention that vehicle-to-load charging with an internal socket is present, but only in the top-spec GT Line S model. Effectively, vehicle-to-load allows you to discharge the battery pack to another appliance, for example, another EV, or indeed a household appliance, such as, let's say, a pump or a coffee machine, which can be very nice when you're camping. Moving swiftly on, we get onto driving comfort. And here the vehicle is fitted with MacPherson strut setups at the front and a multi-link configuration at the rear. The combination is decent when it comes to going in and around town. Although if you are going to go on undulating country roads which are beaten up, then it's just going to feel a little bit rocky. It feels a little more unsteady in comparison to some of the other Kia vehicles and isn't exactly as soft as the likes of the Citroen EC4 or the EC4X, which are absolutely sumptuous in this department. Nonetheless, I do think for most drivers it will suffice. Equally, when it comes to your overall driving dynamics, it's not exactly its forte. While it's a relatively small-sized SUV and therefore doesn't have that much load to shift left and right, you still can feel its battery pack. It doesn't exactly feel all that engaging when it comes to going on to its sport mode preset, which effectively stiffens up the steering wheel and gives you a little bit of extra feel on the accelerator pedal. Nonetheless, it will suffice for normal spirited driving and indeed will exactly not compete with those more sportier SUVs. Now this does actually bring me on to performance, and all the vehicles have got a front wheel drive configuration. The 61 kilowatt hour models have got a 99.5 kilowatts power output with 133 horsepower and 250 newton meters of torque. The first edition model had a slight increase on that with 107.8 kilowatts and 144 horsepower, while sitting at the same sort of torque figure. The 0 to 62 time sits between 8.7 and 9.7 seconds. However, I did actually have the GT line model tested using RaceLogic's Performance Box Touch. From 0 to 20 miles an hour in 2.15 seconds, 0 to 30 miles an hour in 3.22 seconds, 0 to 60 miles an hour in just 8.95 seconds, so yes, faster than the manufacturer's claim, and 50 to 70 miles an hour in 5.21 seconds. I also recorded peak acceleration of 0.53 G, and its top speed is limited to 100 miles an hour, which should certainly suffice for most, but is going to come as a disappointment to those people that live near unrestricted roads. In terms of its overall braking performance, it's actually pretty decent. Not exactly the best, yet again, it's not really a sporty SUV, but when it came to putting my foot down on the brake pedal on a safe manner on a country road, it did actually decelerate pretty rapidly, therefore giving me some extra degree of confidence, especially when it comes to an emergency situation. Next up, we get onto its interior design, and sure enough, it's not going to compete with more premium offerings out there on the market with the use of materials, but the overall look and feel is still there. I particularly like the dashboard design and also the accents, especially with the different coloured upholstery. It's also really lovely to see that you've got physical buttons and dials which are present on the steering wheel. You've got traditional stalks, a flurry of buttons that can be found towards the center console, and also dedicated controls that can be found towards the dashboard, some of which are actually used for controlling your climate, making it very easy to, for example, adjust the overall temperature within the cabin or indeed adjust the fan speed while on the move, therefore not having to faff around with any sort of display. With that said, the overall display layout that Kia have done is absolutely fabulous, something that I've commended the manufacturer in the past for, and it's great to see that you've got a dedicated 5.3-inch climate control menu. This effectively adds to the overall convenience when adjusting the climate and also gives you a visual representation. It's a nice touch on that modern flair while also retaining good practicality. In terms of the center-weighted 12.3-inch display, it's very intuitively laid out like some of other Kia's vehicles out there, and there's plenty of customization as well. In fact, there is a star button that can be found towards the dashboard and also another one that can be found on the steering wheel, which can also be customized. And there are plenty of options to choose from over here, allowing you to really tailor it to your own needs. Now, Android Auto and Apple CarPlay are also supported over a wired and wireless format, and therefore adds to the overall degree of practicality of you using your own music files or, of course, your own navigation should you want to use it. Now, I would also like to highlight there is another 12.3-inch display, and that sits behind the steering wheel. It serves as the instrument cluster. It provides you all the detailed information that one requires and can be somewhat customized to a certain degree. There's also a few different styles that can be linked with the drive modes as well, which can be quite handy for a quick representation in terms of what drive mode you're in. Now there is no head-up display that is present, but it doesn't overly bother me given the overall price point of the EV2. But of course that might be something that you might be looking for, and as a result of it here, you're just going to have to splash out some more money, be it in terms of Kia's siblings or indeed some of its competitors. Now elsewhere, there is a stock 6-speaker sound system that is present within the Air and the GT line. Should you really want to up the ante with an 8-speaker and Harman Kardon audio system, then you'll have to go for the GT Line S. It's a shame that is not present as a standalone option for those people that want an extra bit of oomph. Effectively, the Harman Kardon audio system adds a center audio driver and a subwoofer. In fact, if you want a detailed breakdown of the sound system, make sure you check out my dedicated audio review that can be found up on your pop banner or by following the links down the description below or the pinned comments. Speaking about the different trim levels, the wireless phone charger that is found at the front of the center console is only present in the GT lines. Now, if you don't go for that and you do indeed go for the Air trim, you'll just find a non-slip material instead. Now, further down the center console, you have got a singular cup holder and also a customizable area with a removable tray, effectively giving you an extra cup holder or, of course, a larger open area. Then you've also got some additional storage that can be found within the center armrest compartment, and here it is actually quite nice because you can also place your phone in a slightly diagonal wedge, handy for example for your passenger, or of course if you simply carry around 2 phones. Now, in terms of the glove box, it's fantastic to see that it's been optimized for right-hand drive vehicles, which isn't always the same that could be said, especially with some of its key competitors. As for the door bins, they're actually pretty large. At the front, they'll easily accommodate a 500ml bottle alongside some small to medium-sized valuables. And equally, the rear too are still pretty usable. Undoubtedly over here, they are a little bit more limited in comparison to the ones that are found at the front. You do also have a pull-down armrest compartment which reveals 2 cup holders with a sliding function, which is quite nice to have that extra degree of customization. Now, of course, when it comes to storage, we have to talk about its boot capacity. And here you've got 362 litres to play around with, or 1,201 litres if you drop down the seats. Here you've got 60/40 rear split folding seats with a flat loading bay, a pretty sizable underfloor compartment which will suffice for taking your charging cables or lesser used goods, and you've also got a hatchback design. Well, it's worth noting over here that you've got no electric tailgate whatsoever on any of the trim levels. Now, in terms of additional storage, there is a 15-litre front capacity in the GT line and the GT line S. Quite surprising that it's omitted altogether within the entry-level Air trim, but this additional storage area is a little less accessible because you'll have to pop open the hood as you normally would find on a regular ICE vehicle. Nonetheless, over here, this can actually fit a charging cable and therefore can make it a little bit more practical in terms of utilizing more space in the boot. Now, aside from transporting goods, what about when it comes to seating comfort? Well, here you've got manually adjustable seats as standard. However, they do become electronically operated, at least for the driver, in the GT line. You then also have a memory function with ventilation in the GT Line S. The seats themselves are actually very accommodating and soft, and you've also got a really nice plushy headrest, which is very much appreciated. As for the rear of the cabin, it's actually still pretty usable. Despite the overall compact form factor of the EV2, you might actually be pleasantly surprised. As someone who's just under 6 foot, headroom and legroom weren't exactly a massive problem. Sure enough, it is limited and does feel a little bit more hemmed in, but it's still perfectly usable, especially if you have children or indeed are fitting a child seat. And that is also thanks to the fact that you've got ISOFIX points. Elsewhere, I would like to highlight that it does actually feel very roomy within the cabin, thanks to the fact that you've got this open design, not only towards the front, but also at the rear. Indeed, over here, you've not got any sort of transmission tunnel, and therefore means that the footwell design just feels a bit more spacious and, of course, quite practical, especially if you have got 3 occupants who are sat at the back. Now, elsewhere, I would like to point out that heated front seats and a steering wheel come fitted as standard across the entire trim range, which is very much appreciated, especially on those colder climate days. If you want a sunroof with a tilting and sliding functionality, you'll have to go for the top-spec GT Line S. On that note, the GT Line models have got the larger 19-inch alloys which are pictured. Should you go for the entry-level Air trim, you'll have 16-inch alloys instead. Nonetheless, I do think all the models do look the part, and I've got no real complaints. Towards the front, it very much is like a lot of the modern Kias with its somewhat accentuated design thanks to the headlights. Towards the side, you have got a pretty nice profile and it's somewhat boxy due to its overall shape and form factor. And towards the rear, it does look snazzy thanks to the overall taillights. When it comes to its overall exterior design, I've got no complaints whatsoever, and I actually do love what Kia have done over here. It's actually very similar to the EV3, at least in my opinion. But nonetheless, I would be curious to hear your thoughts down the comment section below. In terms of your colour options, there are quite a few to choose from, and the premium paints will set you back an additional £650. Moving on from its exterior design, we do have to talk about safety. And here, at the time of filming, it has not been tested by Euro NCAP, so I can't give you any sort of crash analysis. With that said, it should actually do well across the board thanks to Kia's pedigree and how other vehicles have fared so far. Now, in terms of your driver assistance systems, as standard and across the entire trim range, you've got a whole host of them included, such as Forward Collision Avoidance Assist 2.0, which I did actually find it to be overly sensitive and actually made me swerve more than it actually should have and almost put me into an oncoming car, so therefore you'll just have to bear that in mind. Then you've got Highway Driving Assist 2.0, which is absolutely fabulous because it gives you steering assist and also great sort of distance keeping from the leading vehicle without feeling jerky either. You've also got Smart Cruise Control 2.0 with stop and go technology, Lane Keep Assist and Lane Following Assist 2.0, Intelligent Speed Limit Assist and Manual Speed Limiter, Blind Spot Collision Avoidance, and a Driver Attention Warning. You've of course got a multi-collision braking system as well. Now you can actually up the ante with the GT Line S because this adds a blind spot view monitor, effectively integrating the side cameras within the instrument cluster. Therefore, when you're indicating, you can actually quickly see your surroundings. A nice little touch, but it is a shame that is limited to the top spec model only. Now, all these driver assistance systems will become re-enabled every single time you power on the vehicle, which is actually pretty cumbersome, at least in my opinion, but this is just due to regulatory requirements. Thankfully, Kia have provided you two shortcuts. By long pressing the steering wheel icon, it can disable Lane Keep Assist, and while long pressing the volume wheel that is found on the steering wheel, you can disable the Speed Limit Assist. Now, there is also that customizable button that can be found on the steering wheel or via the dashboard, and these buttons can take you directly to your driver assistance systems, making it a little less cumbersome than having to faff around with the infotainment system. Now, elsewhere, I would like to mention that when it comes to visibility around the cabin, it's actually excellent. Towards the front, I had no problems whatsoever, and that's also in part due to the fact you've got relatively slender and well-designed A-pillars. Towards the side, you've got very large openings, making it very easy to manually check for your blind spots, and as for the rear, it's got a very wide opening and also an integrated wiper. You've also got front and rear parking sensors and a reversing camera fitted as standard. There's also a turning circle that's rated at 10.02 to 10.3 meters, therefore making maneuverability an absolute breeze. Elsewhere, you've got rear cross-traffic collision avoidance assist and safe exit warning that come fitted as standard. Now, should you want to up the ante, you'll have to go for the GT line because this will give you parking collision avoidance assist. In the GT Line S, however, you've got remote smart parking assist 1.0 and 360-degree cameras, giving you better visibility around the vehicle. So with all that in mind, it brings us on to a verdict of the Kia EV2. And yes, indeed, it's the manufacturer's most affordable and smallest electric vehicle that's currently on sale. You've got a pretty stylish design, both inside and out, and one that's actually pretty practical within the cabin with good use of technology. You've got plenty of driver assistance systems, which can sometimes feel a little bit cumbersome and counterintuitive, but they're there anyway. And you've also got a good amount of space for your front, rear occupants, and also when it comes to boot capacity. Of course, all things considered, it is a compact SUV after all, and therefore it's not going to compete with larger vehicles in its class, including some of its bigger siblings. Now, in terms of the overall electric range, I do think it goes toe-to-toe with some of its key competitors, namely, for example, from the likes of Stellantis, with the Citroën and Peugeot, which really do spring to mind. And for that reason, and its overall asking price, especially with the government grant, I can see myself recommending it, and as such, it gets our Best Buy award. Now, I'd be curious to know what you make of it down in the comment section below, and of course, if you would pick it over some of its key competitors. If you've enjoyed this detailed independent review, do consider dropping a like, subscribing, and hitting that bell notification, all of which would be greatly appreciated. As such, I've been Chris from TotallyEV, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care of yourselves, and goodbye.